Hey, I'm Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy and host of the Armed and Ready podcast. Please come and check out this exciting episode we have for you. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Armed and Ready podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy. Today we have a really cool episode. We have Navy veteran Knight Campbell here joining us today. Knight, thanks for coming, brother.
Jason, thanks for the invite. Excited to talk.
Yeah, man. So, we were chatting a little bit before just about kind of our military experiences in our past and stuff like that. But I'd like to kind of share with our audience a little bit about your past. You went to the Naval Academy. You're an aviator for a while. So, walk us through, the Academy was a dream. I got nominated to the Academy too, and I really wanted to go because Top Gun was the reason I was going military.
Got
right?
me too. Yeah.
Dude, I was gonna fly F-14s and do all that, right?
Of course.
So I didn't get into the academies because of my SAT scores, but clearly you did. So walk me through kind of like your adventure, like and I think getting into the academy is kind of an interesting topic. I don't think we've talked about it on the show. Like, what are they looking for? How do they do it? Like, there might be some parents here that have kids that maybe want to go that route, and it's a great route. Yeah, amazing education. But they look for certain stuff. So tell us a little bit about kind of your whole experience, getting into the academy and how that went.
Yeah. I laugh. My grandfather gave me this model F-14, and that was Top Gun got me for sure.
Yeah.
And I wanted to fly F-14s. And I remember the day, it probably was open source, like information out there for a long time before this, that the F-14 was going away. But I was like, wait, they're not going to be F-14s. Like, that's the whole reason I did this.
Yeah.
So that was a surprise when they transitioned to the F-18s. But the academy's great, I got to see it. I went to the academy as a student. I went back to teach. And I think that gave me a lot more perspective. As a student, I was young, and when you're not 25 yet, you're not cognitively developed. And so there's a lot I just didn't understand. I was like, oh, the process is dumb and nobody understands what's going on, and they could be more blah, blah, blah. And then, as a company officer teaching there, I remember the Secretary of Defense, General Dempsey at the time, was speaking to all the midshipmen, and you could look around, 4,000 people, there are 30 company officers, and I'm looking at my other company officers, colleagues, and we're all like leaning forward with notebooks, like voraciously capturing everything this man says, because he's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, super intelligent individual, and all the midshipmen are like, what? You're missing out, and you don't have the capacity. So all that to say, the academy just puts you in opportunities that are unparalleled. They have great internships. They send midshipmen out on NOLS courses for 30 days. They take people into the fleet, and you get opportunities to go fly and do cool stuff and see what you want to do.
Oh, that's
cool.
The
academics are amazing. I mean, there's so much amazing about it.
Yeah.
But it's only as amazing as what you take away, what you invest.
And
I think as a kid, it was hard because you have academics, you have athletics, you have professional development. They're 20-hour days a lot of times, and it's hard to figure out what the priority is. Like listening to the Secretary of Defense is probably more important than finishing an English quiz, but I'm thinking about the grade, so I'm like trying to do my quiz while SecDef's talking. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it's
opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's cool perspective. I remember, kind of gearing up like when I was in high school to try and, get into the academies and just kind of learning and for those, and you can correct me if I'm wrong too, but they're looking for that student who obviously gets good grades, but is really like well-rounded, right? Like isn't just an academic person, or isn't just a football star, right? Like they're looking for someone who's like gets good grades, plays different sports, has some leadership roles. Maybe you're a team captain, maybe you're in the ROTC program, maybe you're into music too. Like they want people with a lot of that balance, but at a high level. So they want you to be like kicking butt at a high level, like in all these different categories. Right.
Yeah. I was laughing with someone else who went to the academy. It's very humbling. I went to high school, 58 people in my class, like very small. And, I was valedictorian. I had straight A's, blah, blah, blah. And I got there and I was not the smartest person in the room, not even close.
Yeah.
I was not the most athletic. I was not the fastest runner. Like I was just average at best when I went there, which was kind of strange and scary, and also kind of cool. Like, okay, I've got a lot of room to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine, you're there with all these other high school rock stars. Like they were the best at their school at pretty much everything. Right. Or many things. So yeah. And then you kind of go through the nomination process, right? Which there's a couple paths for that too. The congressional nomination is the primary one.
Right.
So, in each either Senate or congressional office has, probably an application and stuff like that you got to do, and you go interview and all that stuff, which is, it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat to get that letter in the mail, from like a senator or congressman, saying that they've given you their nomination. I still have all mine because it's just nostalgic,
Yeah. That's really cool.
And then you got to apply to the university. Right. Like once you get it's not over yet, then you still have to get into the school, which is where I hit the roadblock. But then it's, SAT scores, transcripts, like essays, like all the regular, like college entrance stuff then comes after that. So you've got a few hurdles before you get to that point. And
physical tests. I remember, both medical, you got to get medically qualified, then you got to go do sprints and push-ups and all these things that University of Virginia doesn't necessarily require.
Yeah.
But I'd also, just to throw out, the Naval Academy is amazing. It's an incredible opportunity. If my daughter wants to go there, I will be very excited because we won't have to pay for it as well.
Yeah. That's a nice perk.
But like, there's this sense of, Naval Academy graduates are better, like we're ring knockers. But after like 6 months in the fleet, people in ROTC, people in OCS, like they're at the same level. There's really no, you wouldn't be able to line up a bunch of officers and be like, oh, those three are Naval Academy and those are OCS. Like, I think statistically the OCS and ROTC folks perform at the same level or higher level. And sometimes, that they know how to take care of themselves. At the Naval Academy, we're day in, day out doing professional development, classes, sports, and being fed. We don't know how to cook. We don't know how to pay bills. We don't know what rent's all about.
Yeah.
So there's a big learning curve in just practical knowledge on the back end of the academy too.
That's a good point. Yeah. Well, and the ROTC path, I think, and OCS path. I mean, those are both really good ways.
Absolutely.
If being an officer in the military is the goal. Those are both really, really good ways to get there. And then, so, the education, I think from all the academies, you could put them all kind of at that very high echelon of like what you're going to get for an education. Right. And I think I've heard people say, it's comparable to like an Ivy League education, which is awesome. I mean, for anybody's child, you're looking to put them into an amazing college. Not only do they gain all the other benefits, military career and all the other things that can come with it, but purely the education, if they just do the shortest stint in the military and they're out, they've got a lot of good fallback.
Right. And an incredible network.
The network is
service academy graduates
is huge. Yeah. And I've noticed that just, my industry, in the real estate industry, just witnessing and meeting other folks who went to the academies and that network that they have, it's really strong. And they know people all over the place.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I can call that guy. I can call that gal, like no sweat.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool network to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after the academy, obviously go into the Navy and you got to fly.
Yeah.
So you flew 60s. So tell us a little bit about, the pilot experience and what you had to go through there.
Yeah. So it's funny, from the academy, I thought about doing a master's program. There are a lot of opportunities to go do a master's and whatever. And some of my classmates went, to Oxford and things like that. Pretty incredible. And I was like, oh, I can't do 2 more years of school. And then I went to flight school.
Which is 2 more years of school.
Which was 2 more years of school. But it's cool. And I think one thing I learned, I was talking to someone who's getting their pilot's license. It's always like every time you make a transition, it's really hard. So you'd move to a different place and you have to learn, what altitude to fly in and out, who to talk to, when to turn where. And it was just confusing. And it felt scary because if you turn the wrong direction at the wrong place, you could run into someone else. I understand the systems and engines and drive system throughout the aircraft, like forward and backward, easy day. And then you go to another aircraft and be like, oh no, I don't know anything. And it's like a good life lesson of when you do new things, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So just be patient. I think for myself, I'm like, I must be terrible or dumb or, not good at this thing. But of course you're not. You've never done it before. So
Yeah, you're brand new to it. I think it helps you too with just building that fortitude, right?
right.
When you get hit with the new challenge, it's like, okay, well, I don't know what I don't know, but here we go.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, transitioning out of the military, whatever transition it is just give yourself a little bit of grace for 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it is, and it goes much more smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about flying. So, do you get to go any cool deployments, any places that kind of stick out in your memory that you're like, oh, that was awesome?
Oh, the one thing I went all kinds of cool places. I got to do counter piracy, Gulf of Aden, a lot of Western Pacific stuff. So a lot of building relationships, which is funny. At the time, I was frustrated. I was like, what is this China thing? And why am I not shooting Hellfires? I have to fly around and do surveillance, and it's not exciting and sexy. And now that I understand like the geopolitical scene and where China sits in the US, and like what we were doing was a lot more important than shooting Hellfire somewhere. But yeah, one thing that I remember is we were flying off the coast of Malaysia somewhere, and it was like sunset time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the way the atmosphere was. There's this giant red sun, just really cool. And there's a freaking eclipse. We had no clue this was going to happen, but there's just, I mean, it's like the size of the sky, like ridiculously large red sun with an eclipse. If we climb, we can watch this for longer. So we just kept climbing, and the sun kept going down, and we got to watch this amazing sunset eclipse.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. So cool little stories like that. We got to do lots of cool things. We used to, the IRTC is kind of the traffic lanes in the Gulf of Aden where shipping would go through.
Uh-huh.
And we get up every morning, take off around 5 a.m. and we talk to the ship, and that's kind of how they build their picture of situational awareness. And I remember it was always fun. We do like a traffic report. Good morning from Battlecat 2-4, your traffic report on the IRTC. We've got a Russian shipper and going down this direction and this speed, and it looks like they've got a lot of freight on board. And we just do the whole, and you can hear the people on the ship just laughing. So
that's cool.
We had a lot of fun with it.
But tell me about the piracy stuff. Do you guys? Yeah. So where were like the piracy thing, like off the coast of Somalia, like is where you typically hear about it, right?
Yeah. We're off the coast of Somalia. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Like Somalia doesn't technically have borders, so
I didn't know
normally that. Like I couldn't go within 12 miles of a country, and I've never been to Africa, so my co-pilot and I were like, let's just go over the coast of Africa. And we're like trying to get as close as we could, and the ship's like, you're getting really close. And we're like, oh yeah. And we got yelled at for that one. We were playing like the Rains Over Africa or whatever, the song, on the speaker in the aircraft, and it was fun. But the counter piracy was an interesting mission. It's kind of, at that time, I think it was around 2010, it was a big thing. They were stopping a lot of traffic, and it was important. It felt cool to be doing that. It was also frustrating because we'd get a report, from a Group 3, a tanker or something, like, hey, we're taking shots, we're taking RPGs. And so we'd blast over there, max speed, and you'd see like the little boat with pirates in it, and you'd see them throw their weapons overboard, pull up fishing poles and start fishing. And you're like, well, like I've seen this, but there's no evidence. Like, it's not like I can take down these pirates or do something dramatic because now they're fishing. So it was an interesting mission. Like
man, that's got to be super frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, I just wanted to hit the button.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Awesome, man. So, so you ended up having some teaching time at the academy too. So did you fly first and then go back and teach, or how did that come together? Yeah,
the academy tries to get officers with fleet experience to come back to teach, and I was a company officer, so kind of managing a company of midshipmen and all the human things that go into that.
Yeah.
The HR, if you will, in regular speak. But like, honestly, my wife was a Marine at the time, and she had the opportunity to go back to the Naval Academy, and I did too. And we're like, well, we could go back and work in the same place, and that would be really cool. So I always laugh.
It's a rare opportunity, but that's a good one. Yeah.
That was why we did it. I mean, I got a master's in leadership through that opportunity. Like, that's part of going back. There were a lot of like, oh, this seems like a good idea, but that was a main reason. And so midshipmen, the best and the brightest would come into my office and expect this, me to talk about how wonderful they are. So they'd ask, well, why did you come back to the Naval Academy, sir? Like expecting, well, because I want to work with the most amazing people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, my wife works in that building right over there. And it's pretty sweet to like work in the same place as her. Her face is just be like, oh,
that was not as inspiring as I was hoping.
And honestly, like it was, like I said, you got to listen to SecDef talk. You got these opportunities that I didn't rightly value as a midshipman that were amazing. Working with midshipmen is pretty incredible. Like, all these men and women are going to go out and lead sailors and Marines in crazy circumstances, be it landing on a destroyer, being, having a platoon in Iraq or Afghanistan, and like every ounce of effort I poured into them being better leaders, more selfless, more humble, more competent would translate to those sailors and Marines. So it was, I think, my favorite tour, even counting flying. It was really pretty rewarding.
Yeah, that's cool. I think there's a lot to be said for that when you have that gratitude kind of comes back at you for, your efforts and stuff.
Right.
Better than a medal sometimes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. So how long total were you in?
Yeah, I did 10 years active, and I'm wrapping up my reserve stint right now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
How many years reserve?
This is 5, so 15 total. People look at me like, what? You're leaving after 15 years? You could retire, right? And I do, but, sometimes you got other priorities. We've got a daughter and another one on the way, and my wife's an orthopedic surgeon, and I'd rather support that than, get deployed to Djibouti. So
right. Yeah. A buddy of mine, he went to the Naval Academy and was active duty here, got out, got a really cool corporate job. So I had to move across the country and went into the reserves. And wouldn't you know it, like a year into it, he gets a year-long deployment.
Yeah.
Just had his first baby, that's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really the expectation, I wouldn't think, when you're like, okay, I'm going to do the reserves. I can kind of cool it on the military stuff a little. And it's like, boom, there you go, back in it.
It's pretty common. And honestly, like having done both, I think there's a stigma like, oh, reserves isn't real military. It's way harder to be a reservist. I mean, military, like you got your deployment schedule and you've got your unit and you train with them and you have a job and you go do it. And, I appreciate people thanking me for my service, but I get to fly helicopters and watch eclipses over the coast of Malaysia. Like it was great too. Yeah. Like there are sacrifices, but it's great. A reservist, you have that hanging over your head. Like, hey, we could call you up and send you to Qatar for a year. And not to mention, the Army training in, Alabama or someplace maybe less savory than San Diego for 4 months. That, so I think reservists don't get the credit they deserve.
Yeah, it's a tough gig. And I watch we see all the stuff happening on the news and they get, they activate the National Guard even for stuff happening here in our country. And that's not easy.
Right.
Here they are doing the regular civilian job and it's like, boom, your life just got put on pause. Right. And now you're, dealing with whatever rioters or whatever the thing is you got to deal with. And you don't know how long.
Right.
Is it going to be a week?
Yeah.
It's going to be 6 months.
Look at COVID,
Yeah, that too. I mean, so it is a hard job. It's really hard. Yeah. Definitely a difficult position. So you transitioned out. Did you know what you were going to do when you got out of active duty? Did you have like a plan like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going full charge, or what was your thought process there?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think on active duty, we don't think in those terms. We've got our job and we're working 80-hour weeks, and that's what we do is our job in the military. And then we transition. And to his credit, the Department of Defense, I think, is trying to make that better. They have more and more programs like Skill Bridge. Yeah, is amazing. Go do an internship with another company and learn. Did I know what I was going to do? Yeah, I had my plan, and it was a crap plan. I remember, I was hiking in the Olympics, and that's where all my best thinking comes, like outdoors, doing things. And I was like, I got to think of what I want to do. And I love teaching leadership. I love doing things outside. Like, I think this is a great place to do that, to teach leadership. I had some experiences at the Naval Academy that kind of like really solidified that for me.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, the obvious play here, get a PhD so I can work in a university and create the thing that I know, like experiential leadership training that the Naval Academy already does a pretty good job of doing. So that became my goal, and I applied to a bunch of different PhD programs in business. Had no clue what I was doing. Interviewed for a PhD program at George Washington University from the South China Sea on the POTS line from the carrier, which I think is so funny. You know, it's like 4 a.m. for me and whatever time, 6 p.m. for them. And I didn't ask any questions. I didn't ask, like, what does this program focus on? Like, what are the outcomes? What's a day in the life of a PhD student? You know, I just heard like, hey, we're going to accept you. It was like 4 people out of 200 applicants.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, like I'm going to keep my mouth shut. You know, it's kind of like imposter syndrome. Like I don't want them to find out that I'm just a schmuck who, you know, flies helicopters and
you got lucky getting into this program.
I got super lucky, and I didn't ask those questions. And within like 2 months there, it was clear to me that wasn't where I should be. And that was the hardest decision probably of my life, was to leave that program after a semester. Because they were paying for it. It was prestigious. It was a PhD.
Yeah,
it was the clear path to where I wanted to go. You know, to go to a university and do this stuff. And but it wasn't right. You know, it was research focused. It wasn't practical. It wasn't you know, the PhDs, they can be research focused or practitioner focused. So you can get a PhD so that you can do consulting or run a business, or you can do it to research. And they were heavily research focused, and they're researching things that weren't relevant to my purpose, my dream, where I wanted to go. And it was hard. So when I talk to veterans transitioning, I say ask tons of questions.
Totally.
I talk to a lot of Honor Foundation fellows these days. Like I got into that network, and they see what I do, and they're like, "You do stuff outside all the time? I want to hear hear more," which I get. Like, it's fun. And that program does a really good job of connecting them to people like me, and they can ask questions. You know, like maybe they think, oh, outdoor stuff is amazing, and then they ask me how much we get paid, and we're like, that's not going to support my family. And so they can make better decisions getting out, because we don't think about it while we're in.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think, and they are doing a better job. Like the SkillBridge thing has been big, and they're trying to do some more stuff from that transitioning perspective, which is totally needed.
Absolutely.
And, but yeah, ask lots of questions. That's a really good takeaway. Because so many people just think like, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to go get a job.
Right.
And that's the plan. And yeah, you land a job, but you know, not having those questions and the right answers to understand, like, okay, what is my life going to really look like? You know, as a civilian doing a job at X dollars a year compared to where I'm at now, like, how does that change things? How, you know, there's going to be a shock factor there a little bit too, you know,
right?
Because now all your income's taxed as a civilian. In the military,
taxes,
small part is taxed, right? And the rest of it just shows up in your account. So,
it's beautiful.
You know, like that's just one example of like how different it is. So even though like pay on civilian might be higher in theory, well, gross, once it hits your account, different story, right? Big time. So yeah, I mean, ask tons and tons of questions. So tell us about now. So you have a leadership business
right
now. So walk us through, like, and I know a lot of it, and we talked before, you know, you're doing a lot of it outdoors, and that's, you know, your methodology.
Right.
But tell us kind of, you know, what is a business that teaches leadership? What is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I'm going to be philosophical here. A good business that teaches leadership ought to leave people with more questions than answers. Because we just talked about asking questions. Like, that's kind of a leader's job.
Right.
There's a great book, Don't Turn the Ship Around, by Captain Marquet, I believe, David Marquet. And he was a captain of a submarine. And, you know, in the military, you get this, like, I'm the captain, I have to know everything kind of feeling, which sets you up for failure as a leader. Like, why? Why would you know everything? You have expert sailors who work this equipment every day. And so he kind of makes a case like, you should be walking around asking, how does this work? And not like, show me how this works so that I can tell you things you didn't know and prove how smart I am, but like legitimately, how does this work? What is your day like? Ask those questions and be curious, because that's how you find out that things aren't working in a business, that people have issues that they're not telling, because nobody comes and tells you their issues. Like, they hide them because we're all trying to float along in this life. And we're not going to go to our leaders and say, like, I have this big issue at home, or like the way that you speak shuts me down and I don't want to talk in meetings, or like that. It takes a unique person to do that. So if you leave a leadership development experience more curious, more willing to be vulnerable, more willing to ask authentic and genuine questions, that's a better outcome to me than, a checklist of these are 5 ways to motivate people. Well, great. Maybe they work for your people, maybe they don't.
Right.
Everyone's different.
Yeah, everyone is different. And we use like the DISC assessment a lot, which is a pretty good way to kind of understand your people and how they'll receive communication from you, or instruction, or motivation, or what their personality will be willing to accept, or how they'll approach you and stuff like that. So it helps give a little bit of insight. I mean, it's not a perfect system, but it's helpful in that regard. And so I try and leverage that. Keeping it top of mind is the other struggle, but
yeah, that's the struggle.
Yeah.
We're DISC certified to provide it. And yeah, it's like, great. I've got this amazing report and it tells me what I should do when, like if then statements. If Knight replies to your email in all caps, then Knight isn't mad. It's just the way you communicate, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. He's trying to be funny.
Remembering it in the moment when you get an all caps email and you're like, what the, why are you yelling at me? And I'm angry. Is different.
Yeah. So in your business, tell us a little about kind of the outdoor component, as far as like how you leverage being, outdoors and all that stuff in tandem with teaching people leadership.
Yeah, it's really just the best place for personal and professional growth. What's cool about the outdoors, even if we didn't have good curriculum, which we do, and didn't have great coaches and guides, which we do, it makes you happier, healthier, more creative. And there's more and more science out there that shows that. So being outdoors makes people 50% more creative. We think more differently. We're unplugged from our cell phones. We can grapple with problems with different parts of our brains, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It makes us healthier. Like, there are health benefits from relieving stress, lowering blood pressure, increasing white blood cell count. It's crazy. Like, we have this amazing, it's like a miracle drug. And people are like, nah, I'd rather just pop aspirin and sit in my dark hole of an office. It breaks my heart. But what's also amazing about it is it gives real-time opportunities to reflect on and use these things. So if we're talking about decision-making, there are decisions that have to be made. For backpacking, we can take this route or this route, and this route is more beautiful. This route is easier. And invariably, some of the group wants the easier route because they're maybe not in as good of shape, and some of the group wants the beautiful route because it's beautiful. And like, great, here's the theory, here's OODA loop, here's how teams can make decisions, here are some different strategies, go. And people have to use it, and they're emotionally engaged with it. The outcome of the decision matters. It's not like, here's a case study from Harvard Business School about this company that you haven't heard of and don't really care about. What would you do? How would you make the decision? Like, that's valuable, but you're not invested in it in a emotional way, in a somatic way. Yeah. And so you don't remember it as well.
Right. Yeah. That emotional connection to it, on top of the intellectual piece, right? You had to think through it, but yeah, I like that. That emotional piece is what makes it stick.
Right.
I mean, if we look back at like experiences in our lives, right? The ones that stick out the most had a strong emotional connection to it, good or bad, whatever it was.
Absolutely.
And those are the ones that come to mind when you think of past events, right?
It's how we remember things. I think of, we take people rock climbing, which is super fun and it's scary. And, a lot of people get stuck in the middle of a climb and they're scared and they want to give up and they're clinging to the wall, and you're like, hey, just take a break. Like, you're on a rope. You can just sit back. They're like, no, I'm good. It's funny because I've done it 100 times, but they will work through that. Maybe they sit back and take a breather and shake out and like, oh, wow, like there are all these holds I didn't notice because I was fixated on where I was, or maybe they just take some deep breaths and oxygen, whatever it is. They find a way to work through that fear. And then the next time they feel that fear, they will remember that solution. So when they're in a board meeting and they have a presentation, adrenaline's amped up and they're, forgetting things, they're like, oh yeah, take a deep breath, or just take a quick break, shake it out. Those things transfer, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's way easier to bring back to life once you've just had to go apply it.
Right.
And do those things rather, versus reading it. And I've read some cool, like great leadership books, John Maxwell,
Absolutely. Yeah.
probably the king of authors in the leadership category. Right.
Right.
And tons of great value, but, books I read, 15 years ago on leadership, it's hard to recall all the great little tips and tricks because I didn't right away go outside and start applying that particular thing I just read a chapter on, you hope that it sinks in over time and you can apply it, but that's the hope, right? So that's really cool. So how long have you been doing this business in this fashion, doing the outdoor combination with it and everything?
Yeah. So we started the business 3.5 years ago, I guess.
Okay.
And started really the way that we're doing these weekend adventures maybe 1.5 years ago. Since then, we've done 21 of these adventures, taken over 100 people out on these adventures, which is cool. We started at Joshua Tree. Now we're doing adventures. I'm heading up to the Olympics in Washington State next week, which is, I'm so excited.
That's going to be fun.
We're going to the Smokies in Tennessee, Shenandoah in Virginia. So it's a good part of the job. We just think, where would be a cool place to go?
So you guys go all over the place, not just here in Southern California.
We're going all over the place.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you guys set up stuff? Are you, I guess, from a clientele perspective, are you looking for leaders in a company to do kind of a team thing on a weekend? Or are you looking for just one-offs who want to just get some additional leadership training? Or what does that typical person look like for you?
My favorite answer is yes. Yeah, we do both. We work with teams. It's kind of fun. And a lot of times that's during the week because teams, don't want to take up their employees' weekends, which I totally get. Their employees ought to be out doing stuff outside anyway.
Yeah.
So we have 12 core competencies, and we think of our curriculum as a buffet. So we take all the relevant research, sometimes conflicting research. One person will say this and one person will say this. We don't believe in the 10 key elements of leadership from Cairn Leadership. We believe in giving people a bunch of different tools, asking them which one are you going to use on Monday, and then calling them on Tuesday and say, did you use that tool? That's how people actually grow.
Need that accountability, right?
Right, exactly. So, yeah, we'll work with a team's leadership and say, these are the 3 competencies we want to work on and design a trip wherever they want, which is cool. If they're a team in Texas, okay, great. We'll figure out permits and go to Big Bend or wherever. Focus on those things and activity that's approachable and yet also challenging for them. But I'd say our bread and butter is bringing different people, the one-off, people who are unwilling to waste life, who want to dig in and be better leaders, to learn. They sign up, and we get a range of, a 22-year-old plumber to a business owner, and that conversation is powerful.
Yeah.
Because if you're 22 years old, you get a lot of perspective from a business owner, but a 22-year-old plumber is going to be like, that doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? To a business owner, where as a business owner, you just don't get that.
Yeah. You're not going to get your 22-year-olds at your company, asking you questions like that because you're the big guy at the top, know?
Yeah. You keep trying to communicate with me by email, but I use TikTok. I don't know TikTok. I'm afraid of it, but just an example.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's pretty cool. So do you, kind of in your everyday life, do you have a lens, you kind of see everything through? Because leadership is your thing. So,
right.
I'm just thinking I watch the news or I'll hear about something. Do you have kind of that leadership filter now? Oh, well, this guy is a terrible leader, or, he's pretty good. Do you have those thoughts when you're just kind of doing your everyday stuff?
Yeah. My thought is never to judge. We were talking about character and authenticity the other weekend while we were climbing in Big Bear, and we brought up the Man in the Arena quote by Theodore Roosevelt. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's not the critic that counts. It's, the person who's in the arena who's bloody and sweaty and under the trials and tribulations. So rarely do I look at other people's leadership, and I usually assume oh, there's something there that I don't understand. So to answer your question, I think the lens is curiosity.
Okay.
And always digging deeper. So we just finished the Leave No Trace trainer certification for 6 of our guides. And Leave No Trace, like when you look at it, it's like 7 principles, how to respect the outdoors more, like where to bury your poop and why. It's pretty basic. But when you start scratching that surface and you start looking at the ecosystems and like what's happening to the poop and why you should bury it some places and not other places, it gets really complex. Same with leadership.
Yeah.
You know, like I mentioned, there's no rule to leadership that's going to be different in different places. So usually my lens is, well, what's going on there? What do I not understand yet? And how could I apply that understanding to what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Funny that we got to talking about poop, but
yeah, I mean, I love talking about pooping.
Don't most
woods,
conversations,
so.
especially as a parent, end up going there, right? No, but that's really cool. I just, as you're saying it, I'm kind of thinking like, oh, maybe get the leadership in my company to go do a weekend thing or during the week thing would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be great.
Not only for the knowledge and practical things we would gain, but also just the camaraderie and the teamwork piece too, right?
Well, and you ask what's different outdoors. That's hugely different. The places people are willing to go, the vulnerability. I think because we're all a little bit vulnerable. Like, hey, we're sitting under a mountain and it could like storm on us or hail on us or drop rocks on us or like all these things that mountains can do. Like, we're all vulnerable. We're all in this together. And all of a sudden you're talking about things that you would never talk about in a work context or in a conference room, kind of touchy-feely, like let's get to know each other, where you're just having that conversation hiking. We don't even have to do anything. We just say like, hey, talk about your core values. And people are like, let me tell you about my core values. I've never told anyone this before. And that's neat. Pretty amazing.
That's really cool. So what's next for you guys from a business perspective? Are you looking to, add more people? You have like a growth projection, or what are you guys aiming to do?
Yeah, I firmly believe that the way that we're doing leadership development ought to be done by everyone. Like, we are our best selves when we spend time A, outdoors, and B, on adventures. And that could be a cooking class if you never cook, but getting out of your comfort zone and doing new things and exploring the world. Like, we're big about this idea of transfer. You can experience things if you go to a cooking class and realize that you've never added salt and that's why your food isn't tasty. With a good coach there, salt could be part of your culture in your business. It could be like, I never appreciate what people do. And then you can transfer that. And then now you remember it because you're like, oh, it's like salt. Like, hey, Jason, thanks for what you do. I appreciate that you cleaned up after I left yesterday or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're big on this transfer. So it's just a powerful place. So where we're going, we want to do a spoke and hub model where we're going to look into Seattle and DC. Those are the 2 markets that we're going to be focused on for the next 2 years. And then we're looking at Nashville, Minnesota, North Conway up in New Hampshire, and getting good people. We have amazing people. Our guides are, ex-special forces people who now have a PhD in leadership, or people who have led expeditions all over the world and are now studying at Vanderbilt to get their master's in leadership, or people who have coached thousands of people. We look for people with really cool experiences and different perspectives, military, civilian, who then we can teach Leave No Trace in wilderness medicine and like how to keep people safe. Yeah. And then they can take leaders out and canoe and talk about deep things. That's hopefully cool. Not the river, but like business.
Yeah, this river is really deep.
So yeah, we want to grow into a hub and spoke and get more and more people out on more varied. We're canoeing for the first time this year. We're mountain biking for the first time next year. So meet people where they are.
Yeah. Oh, that's really fun, man. So how do people get in touch with you and find out more? If they're thinking about this might be something cool for our team or our company. How do they dig into that?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn, I haven't checked, but I think I'm probably the only Knight Campbell on LinkedIn. So connect with me there. That's easy. The website's cairnleadership.com, CAIRN leadership.com. We have a guide named Cairn, and she's like, maybe you should just call me KJ because this isn't working for me.
Is it all modeled after you, Cairn?
Yeah, she's awesome. I would model the business after her. She's pretty good. But the website, LinkedIn, emails knight@cairnleadership.com. And I joke, COVID, a lot of people just made the assumption that you got to be on Zoom. I talked to a lot of people and said, hey, we can do 30 minutes of Zoom, but after that, like, would you like to trail run or go for a hike or mountain bike? And a lot of people said, heck yeah, like, I've got a mountain bike, let's do it. So you want to learn more, like, look me up and let's go mountain bike or climb something or hike, and we'll talk.
I love it. That's really cool. Well, Knight, thanks so much, man, for sharing your journey and your story, man. So cool. And I know that we dropped some really good info on people, you know, talking about everything. So I hope that people, you know, gain something really good from this. And I hope they reach out to you. I'm definitely going to look into it for our group here. And, you know, I think
Sounds great.
I think it'd be fun. And getting outside and doing some of this stuff is absolutely the way to go, especially after being cooped up for the last year and a half. I mean, people have got to be like scratching at the walls to go do something fun outside.
Demand's high. Even the people who are like, I would never rock climb, are like, well, if I get to talk to other people face to face, like, maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, that's simple motivation, right? Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. Appreciate your service and what you do. Yeah. It's awesome, man. Thanks for serving our community.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you have any questions about the guests on the show, please reach out to me at valoanguy.us.